Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving right in, and I want you to step into the shoes of an anthropological documentary filmmaker with me. We're uncovering one of the most fascinating and honestly nearly forgotten eco-friendly marvels of the ancient world. We're taking a deep look at the Vayal Paran. These are the traditional agricultural watchtowers built by ancient Eastern Sri Lankan Muslim farmers. And we're going to explore exactly how these incredibly resourceful people mastered a form of architecture born purely out of profound necessity. You see, in this specific region, agricultural lands were carved directly out of dense, totally untamed forests. So, what does that mean? It means the very second the crops ripened, they became an immediate, massive target for herds of wild elephants, foraging boars, and huge flocks of migratory birds. To defend their vital harvest, these farmers literally had to establish a constant, vigilant presence right smack in the middle of these exposed fields. Just imagine the immense emotional resonance and the sheer driving necessity behind what you're seeing here. These ancient farmers were completely alone in the untamed wilderness. They invented these ingenious architectural structures to survive freezing nights and protect their crops because, well, it was a matter of pure survival. We're talking miles away from the safety of their villages. They were relying entirely on their own wits and these hand-built shelters to endure incredibly unpredictable weather and the absolute constant threat of lethal animal encounters. Okay, let's dive into this. The Paran is so much more than just a hut in a field. It represents an absolute masterclass in vernacular engineering and sustainable ecological heritage. These were constructed exclusively from natural timber poles, tightly wound vines, and palm leaves. That's it. They were completely devoid of modern metal nails or plastic. Vernacular engineering like this relies on an incredibly intimate understanding of exactly how natural materials behave under stress. The builders knew precisely how to leverage gravity, tension, and natural friction to create a totally robust shelter. Every single piece was pulled from the earth and designed to eventually return to it, leaving absolutely zero permanent footprint on the landscape.
Now, if you're wondering about the exact historical timeline here, I have to state clearly, I don't know the exact century the very first Paran was constructed. Those exact dates are unfortunately lost to unrecorded agrarian history. But what I can tell you with absolute certainty is that its profound, sustainable legacy is undeniably timeless. This is an architectural philosophy that literally transcends centuries. It was passed down through generations of families who learned to build not by reading blueprints, but by watching their elders work in total harmony with the natural environment.
But before you even build the tower, you've got to have the perfect foundation. Enter the Thrai-putti. This was pure tactical genius. By strategically constructing these elevated earth mounds near the threshing floors, farmers protected the vital, newly harvested grain from hungry nocturnal ducks and sudden, unexpected flooding right at the source. And the engineering of the mound itself was highly deliberate. By shaping the earth with specific gradients, they ensured that heavy monsoon rainwater would naturally diverge and flow smoothly around the base of the mound. This kept the precious grain sitting on top perfectly dry and totally secure.
The farmers had this profound, unbreakable reliance on their surrounding environment. Just look at these materials. You have Kasan timber for the poles, incredibly strong Navakudi vines for the lashings, and Kitagu palm leaves for the roof. Literally everything was harvested directly from the lush green paddies and the surrounding forests. They were building highly complex, weight-bearing structures without a single piece of manufactured metal. The Navakodi vines, for instance, had to be harvested at very specific times to ensure maximum flexibility. This allowed the farmers to tie knots that would actually only grow tighter as the wood aged and settled over time.
Section 1. Engineering Marvels, the Anatomy of the Paran.
So, the vernacular construction process was incredibly precise. Step 1. Dig exactly 9 holes at strict 7-foot intervals. Step 2. Erect the 6-foot arugakal, which are the corner posts. Step 3. Lash the taller mutakal, the ridge poles. The specific height differences between these poles were meticulously calculated to create this perfect, rain-deflecting architectural slant. But you know, that 7-foot interval in Step 1 is particularly fascinating. That measurement wasn't arbitrary at all. It was specifically calibrated for human ergonomics, providing the exact amount of space needed for a grown man to stretch out and sleep comfortably. It maximized internal spatial efficiency without compromising the structural integrity of the tower one bit. And this brilliantly illustrates the deep engineering knowledge they possessed. The amukam were specialized, tension-heavy lashings applied directly over the palm roof. By locking the external roof and the internal crossbeams together, these lashings allowed the entire structure to defy brutal winds and severe agricultural weather systems.
Think about it. Instead of fighting the wind with rigid, unyielding walls, the amukam lashings actually gave the roof a slight, calculated flexibility. That allowed the heavy gales of the monsoon season to literally pass over the structure without tearing the whole shebang apart.
The structural adaptability of these farmers is just staggering. They didn't just build one generic type of tower. They engineered 4 distinct structural typologies, and these were designed for entirely different ecological and surveillance needs. You've got the standard ground-level Vayal Paran, the asymmetrical Shrampi, the towering Eni Paran, and the heavily camouflaged Oli Paran. Each design was a specific, perfectly tailored response to the unique geographical challenges of their farmland, proving that these builders were essentially ancient, highly observant landscape architects.
Let's look at a vivid contrast here. The Eni Paran was a massive ladder-bound structure, sometimes requiring 4 to 7 stepladders, used to survey sprawling, expansive open-field properties. Out there, visibility across long distances was the primary concern. Conversely, the Oli Paran was essentially an arboreal survival pod built directly into the branches of trees. This level of camouflage was absolutely essential because forested farmlands presented an entirely different threat level. In dense forests, your visibility is super low, and the risk of a sudden close-quarters ambush by roaming wildlife is incredibly severe. The Oli Paran was designed top to bottom to hide the farmers from those unpredictable, deadly encounters.
Right inside the structure was the true beating heart of the Paran, the Sudavan. This perpetual internal fire pit played a crucial, literally life-saving role. It provided a constant defense against freezing night temperatures and swarming insects, but more importantly, it was a ready source to grab and light firebrands in an instant to drive away wandering wild elephants. Maintaining this fire required constant, unbreakable vigilance. Letting that Sudavan go out meant exposing yourself not just to the bitter cold, but to the very real danger of nocturnal predators moving right into your camp totally undetected.
Section 2. Folk Poetry and Livelihood. The Watchman's Soul. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the raw folk poetry captured here. It reveals the true internal life of the watchman, forever immortalizing their isolation. You can practically hear the literal physical pain of sleeping on rough timber, combined with the deep romantic longing and the heavy exhaustion of their isolated existence. These verses, they weren't just art, they were a vital psychological coping mechanism. By vocalizing their struggles into poetry, they were able to process the intense stress of their environment and hold on to their humanity in the face of profound loneliness.
The livelihood of the farmer was incredibly grueling, to say the least. To cure their intense physical fatigue, they relied entirely on meager, locally foraged meals. Their diet consisted of simple samba rice, salted dry fish, coconut, and whatever fresh river fish, kunjumin, and wild greens like valel they could pull from the immediate landscape right around their watchtower. The inclusion of salted dry fish, or carvado, was a massive nutritional necessity. Because they were stationed far from their villages for weeks at a time, they desperately needed high-protein, salt-rich food that absolutely would not spoil in the intense humidity. It ensured they actually had the physical energy required to patrol those fields day in and day out.
And because their dry rations were so precious, they engineered the kagakudu. Notice the sheer ingenuity here. This was a specialized protective basket cleverly hidden high up inside the roof. It was an architectural quirk designed entirely to outsmart nature, ensuring that while the watchmen slept, scavenging birds, agile monkeys, and ground animals couldn't steal their only food supply. A lost food supply out in the fields didn't just mean a hungry night. It meant abandoning the post and leaving an entire season's harvest completely unprotected. To survive this deep, crushing isolation without losing their minds, these watchmen developed an incredibly intimate connection with the cosmos. Without modern clocks, they read the passing of time through celestial movements, they tracked shifting wind patterns, and they observed the flight of birds to predict the weather and the time of day. Their very survival depended on an acute awareness of nature's rhythms. A sudden change in wind direction or even a specific bird call could be the only early warning system they had for an approaching storm or a stampeding herd. The contrast in their daily life was staggering. One moment, they faced the terrifying physical danger of wild boars violently breaking through the fences, requiring immediate adrenaline-fueled action. The next moment, they found emotional release by singing loud, competitive folk verses out into the dark, expansive void. This powerful vocal tradition served a brilliant dual purpose. It reminded them they were still alive and connected to one another across the vast fields, and the booming sound of their voices simultaneously helped deter cautious predators lingering right at the edge of the tree line.
Section 3.
Modern transition, an indelible legacy.
The contrast today is stark and immediate. Ancient parans were crafted in deep ecological harmony. These were temporary structures that left zero footprint on the earth. Today, they are rapidly being replaced by modern watchtowers, dominated by concrete, plastic, and rigid permanence. This rapid encroachment is slowly tearing down a beautifully sustainable heritage. The shift from biodegradable vines and timber to unyielding cement signifies a fundamental change in how we interact with the land. We're moving from a relationship of temporary stewardship to one of permanent, rigid control.
Yet, I must firmly assert this, despite modern advancements and the rise of concrete structures out in the fields, the legacy of the Paran is permanent. It will forever remain a foundational pillar of Eastern Sri Lankan Muslim cultural identity, and a lasting testament to their historical, ecological harmony. Even as the physical wooden towers slowly fade from the landscape, the agricultural wisdom, the folk poetry, and the deep generational resilience they represent continue to live on vibrantly within the community's cultural memory.
Which leaves us to deeply contemplate this final thought. When our sustainable human ingenuity is replaced by rigid modern materials, what profound cultural soul is lost in the process? Thank you for joining me on this deep dive in today's Explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.